Gojo Satoru is the strongest character in the first 235 chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen. His birth shifted the world's balance, and his disappearance at the hands of Kenjaku led to grave consequences. With Gojo's overwhelming strength, he symbolized insurance. If no one else can do it, Gojo can. And in today's video, we're putting this strength to the test. Now, I know how ridiculous this topic sounds, and trust me, I agree. At least it should seem ridiculous, but with context and things shown in the series, not only does this topic make sense, but the nerfs aren't actually that crazy. Gojo at his full power gaps the verse. We've been knew this. It's why Gege had to seal him away for literally over 130 chapters. He fought Sukuna by himself and nearly outdid the combined efforts of over a dozen sorcerers, while Sukuna had an extra technique that literally granted him access to infinite adaptation. That's just who Gojo Satoru is. It's also why literally every time we see him fight, he wins. And if he doesn't outright, it's because he's nerfed by something. Of course, the only time he actually lost a completely fair 1v1 was against Sukuna, but no one is holding that against him. Anyways, again, Gojo was almost always nerfed, and what I mean by that might not be what you're thinking, but we'll get into that in a second. With that yap aside, let's address the elephant in the room. How strong is crippled Gojo? Despite the fact that Gojo looks like that one girl from that meme, you'd be surprised that every nerf that I gave Gojo can actually be scaled, talked about, and proven within the story. I'm not making this up. Literally every single thing that I applied to Gojo is something that you can track back to the series itself. So prepare to have your eyes open to the greatness that is crippled Gojo. The first nerf Gojo receives is the loss of all of his limbs except one arm. I'm not gonna cop out for this nerf and allow Gojo to use RCT to get his limbs back. Let's just imagine the limbs are permanently gone. Say Mahito used Idol Transfiguration and blew them up like he did to Todo. Can Gojo fight with literally no legs and one arm? Does he get weaker? If so, how much weaker does he get? Shockingly, we know a lot of things that might happen if we put Gojo in this state, so let's get into it. In chapter 223, Gojo, Utahime, Gakuganji, and Ijichi charge up a surprise attack on Sukuna. As Utahime dances, the narrator tells us that the mastery of Jujutsu is said to be the mastery of subtraction. The skill of a sorcerer can be judged based on their ability to omit prerequisites like hand size and incantations in order to fully activate their technique. Of course, this doesn't mean you suck if you can't delete these prerequisites. In fact, when you don't omit them, you get a supercharged version of your technique. This is why Gojo's Hollow Purple was boosted to 200%, because he didn't skip a single step when shooting it. He chanted and made every hand sign possible to amp it. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the narrator's statement is basically just glazing Gojo. We know that back during Gojo's years in high school, let alone in his adulthood where he reaches levels that seem flawless and all-powerful according to Yuta, Gojo already perfected minimizing the necessary hand signs for the limitless technique. The anime puts more emphasis on this as we see Gojo casually switching between neutral infinity, blue, and red, without him needing to do anything fancy to switch between them. It's funny because even though it's implied that you need to do some prerequisites to make your curse technique stronger, Gojo is like one of the only people in the verse who can make his curse technique stronger without any prerequisites. In Shibuya, Gojo's limitless technique is repeatedly being taken down by Jogo and Hanami with domain amplification. The first time, Gojo just takes it to the chin and dominates them in hand-to-hand combat to bait Hanami into dropping the technique. And when she does, Gojo rips her eyes out. Then after Gojo weakens her, he stands in between them again trying to use domain amplification and deliberately says he's just going to strengthen his curse technique. He then just turns around to Hanami, no hand signs, no chance. He just walks towards her and his limitless just gets stronger and stronger. It gets to the point where Jogo literally gives up on trying to use domain amplification and then Hanami just explodes. This is literally what Gojo can do casually, again, without any prerequisites. And the reason it's funny is because for like the first 20 chapters, the guy was using a hand sign to use just basic infinity, something he was doing before his awakening. But now we know Gojo just wanted to flex because, again, he can strengthen his technique without any hand signs or chance, but also his infinity is literally always on passively. The Hanami thing isn't even the only time we see Gojo do something without hand signs or chants that we've come to think that he needed to use. We all know about Gojo's teleportation, right? He has to have a target, then he uses both of his hands to clasp them together, and then he teleports. Simple, right? Wrong. The guy was fighting Jogo, used teleportation and sent himself all the way to where Yuji was, carried Yuji with one hand, and teleported himself back to Jogo. I know it's stated that he can only use this technique under certain circumstances, but all I'm seeing is just another technique Gojo can use without hand signs, but he just decides he wants to. I genuinely thought he needed the hand signs before this video because he uses it during Goodwill, against Toji, during Volume 0, even against Sukuna the first time. Apparently Gojo just likes to flex, so yeah, Cripple Gojo can use teleportation. Go figure. You thought the Gojo hand sign shenanigans stopped there? No, bro. There's still more. We all know about Blue, right? He has his target, he uses one or two of his hands to create the void that is blue and shoots it. Simple, right? Wrong. During Goodwill, Gojo is locked outside of the event because he's just too much to handle for the squad inside, but regardless, eventually Gojo just breaks the veil by himself. He's floating in the air and looks around for his first target, and it's that one weird guy who's obsessed with clothing racks. He teleports to him, mind you, with the hand signs, then literally looks at him and uses 8 blues at the same time. Guys, Gojo didn't even move. Heck, the next page shows his hands in his pockets. Gojo can literally look at you and spawn blues on you. I have zero idea why this is a thing, but it is. And I'm pretty sure it's something he mastered after minimizing the hand signs for neutral infinity. What's crazy about this is the fact that this can also apply to red depending on your interpretation of the hidden inventory statement. Gojo says that simultaneously activating multiple reds and blues respectively is coming along as well. The Goodwill feat is the blue variant of what he's saying here, so it might be safe to assume he can do literally the exact same thing with reds. This is why people say Gojo was nerfed against Sukuna, because these ridiculous techniques that we know he has aren't used during the fight. At least we don't get to see it, because I think people forget that we didn't see like 9 minutes of the fight because of domains. Anyways, Cripple Gojo is officially granted blue without any hand signs and red without hand signs because that's just what Gojo can do. We all know about Hollow Purple, right? He uses both of his hands to clasp them together, then he separates them, puts his left hand on his right arm and shoots it. Simple, right? Wrong again. When he fights Toji, he's in the air chilling, then he stares at him, uses the second to last hand sign, which is the 2 fingers pointing out, and then just shoots it. He doesn't need to use the other hand for the red and blue combination. He doesn't need one of the hands on the right arm. He just needs one hand and he can shoot a Hollow Purple. Wait, no, scratch that. He just needs one hand to shoot a conventional Hollow Purple. For all we know, Gojo can use an unlimited Hollow Purple like the one he used against Sukuna without any hand signs, because we just established he can use red and blue without any movement, so he can keep the two just spawned in the air and collide them. Now, domain expansion is just deliberately something Gojo has to use a hand for, so Cripple Gojo can use that bad boy as well. We're talking about all these techniques and ignoring a huge factor on Cripple Gojo's performance. Gojo can't walk or do any sort of hand-to-hand combat because he has one limb, is what I would say if I wasn't a Gojo fan. Come on now. Gojo can literally fly. Having no legs does nothing to him because he can levitate, and we just established that the boy can use teleportation in blue. The reason why I say blue is because the technique is literally a cheat code when Gojo uses it to his advantage. In chapter 235, as Gojo faces off against Mahoraga and Sukuna, Gojo decides to shoot a red to the already existing blue from earlier. I just want to point out that it's deliberately stated that the blue lost output after killing Agito, so this isn't exclusive to a maximum output blue. Mahoraga is ordered by Sukuna to get to the red as soon as possible and get in the way of them colliding, but Gojo uses the blue to accelerate faster than Mahoraga, who is already on his way towards it and defends against him. It's stated that the blue affects everyone, but it's only Gojo who utilizes this, while Sukuna just sits in Mahoraga's shadow instead of doing the exact same thing Gojo did. With that being said, Cripple Gojo wouldn't have trouble traveling around a hypothetical battlefield as he can fly, teleport, and use blues to move around at high speeds. Yeah, taking away 3 of his 4 limbs basically did nothing to him because, again, which is so ridiculous, Gojo can amp his base technique with 0 prerequisites, and he can activate his more advanced techniques with little to no prerequisites, like teleportation, blue, red, and purple. The only thing he needs is a hand sign for his domain expansion, but we all knew that because domains are literally the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. The next nerf Cripple Gojo received was being blindfolded.
With the W9 and the W2, how do I file the W9?
Alright, this is a super funny case because everyone who's seen literally one episode of this series knows that this is almost a complete non-factor. Gojo lives with a blindfold on at all times. It's his most iconic feature and the reason so much of us recognize him. The fact is that Gojo with a blindfold on doesn't do anything to him. I've gone through this in 2 of my videos before, go check them out if you haven't, but I'll take this chance to yap just because I can. Gojo has the 6th eyes, and with it he has an extraordinary understanding and vision when it comes to curse energy. Again, the most noticeable feature on Gojo when you first see him is his blindfold. Gojo can wear a blindfold unlike anyone else because even while something is blocking his regular vision, he can see curse energy like he's using a high resolution thermography. However, the reason the guy wears blindfolds isn't just because he can, he does it because the 6th eyes tires him out when they're completely exposed. If anything, this might be an amp for Cripple Gojo, but there's an emphasis on might because Gojo takes off his blindfolds or anything covering his eyesight whenever he's actually about to get serious. But even then, I feel like 9 times out of 10 is just a way for him to flex on the readers. Yeah, so this, in quotation, nerf is not really a nerf, but it was something I added because unlike 99% of the verse, being blindfolded actually helps Gojo most of the time. Cripple Gojo is also poisoned. I want to remind you that I never took away reverse curse technique from Gojo, I just made it so that he can't get his limbs back through Outer Transfiguration. Just want to say this real quick, you cannot get your limbs back if Mahito transfigures them. I don't know who needed to hear that, but it's true. Anyways, this nerf is super nuanced because not only have we seen poison in Jujutsu Kaisen being used against people multiple times, but also we've seen people cure it in multiple ways. Let's get into it. For the examples of poison being used, we've seen both sides of the spectrum for effectiveness, from complete immunity to literal paralysis. The first time we see poison being used is literally Junpei's curse technique. He has the ability to poison people, and when used against non-sorcerers in a school, everyone faints, then he's able to target a bully specifically and it causes him immense pain, likely paralyzing him to the point where Junpei can beat the crap out of him. He then tries to use it against Yuji and it fails because Sukuna is just immune to poison for some reason. Speaking of Sukuna and poison, his finger is literally stated to be a lethal poison that would have killed Yuji had he not been a worthy vessel. Megumi also goes through it and doesn't die, so maybe he has some poison resistance too. It's a super weird topic all things considered. Choso, Eso, and Ketsuzu's blood are poisoned because they are a hybrid between human and cursed spirit. Eso and Ketsuzu poison Nobara and Yuji during their fight, and Eso directly tells us that the pain and poison basically stops you from moving. Of course, again, this didn't apply to Yuji because he's that guy, but Nobara's actually poisoned the entire time until she gets to Shoko, so it's a really weird case for this one as well. Choso's piercing blood and supernova are like a literal cheat code because they're a shortcut for him to just get his blood into you. He used piercing blood on Urame and they blocked it, but even after healing the hand that took damage, they were still poisoned from the blood. This led to Urame almost collapsing and breathing heavily, but nothing actually lethal. Then Choso fights Naoya, hits him with supernova, and Naoya is unable to get up from the ground. He tries to, but as he says, his body's rejecting the non-human blood that entered him, so he's literally paralyzed. Again, paralysis, but nothing actually lethal. And then we enter real poison. Kashimo's curse energy trait is that of electricity. When he fights Panda, he directly compares it to Nue, who shoots lightning. Hakari, knowing this, sends the dude into the ocean, and Kashimo's electric cursed energy trait is used against him as he continues to expend all of his CE against his will. Hakari thinks he won, but suddenly he can't breathe properly, his eyes are shutting by themselves, and he's throwing up like Naoya did. Hakari was hit with chlorine gas poisoning and it literally ends him. He can't move, his brain is frying, and he's just susceptible to anything Kashimo wanted to throw at him. Now, Cripple Gojo will be giving chlorine gas poisoning. It's the most lethal one and the one with the most insane effects. If Gojo can't treat this, forget dying to the people he's fighting, he's dying to the poison first. So now this begs the question, can Gojo heal poison? Let's talk about it. In the hidden inventory flashback, Gojo, again 10 years before the current story, says that he's trying to learn how to make infinity distinguish poisonous objects, but that'll take some time itself. Obviously, in quotations, some time doesn't mean more than 10 years. And even then, he stops piercing blood, a poisonous object, with his infinity completely passively. Now, there's only 2 people we've seen heal poison, Yuta and Hakari, and the funny thing about this is that both of them use reverse curse technique illogically. There is just no way that Gojo, whose talent is on par with Yuta, who's literally stated to do anything he tries, cannot heal poison. It's completely unsupported by the story, and so yes, I'm giving Gojo that ability because we've seen him do things off the fly. He has the second best reverse curse technique in the series, and the final nail in the coffin is the infinity's hypothetical ability to distinguish poison. It's literally stated that you have to be able to acknowledge and remove the source of poison from the body in order to heal it. So if Gojo is able to give his infinity the ability to distinguish poison, there's nothing stopping himself from having the ability to. So yes, crippled Gojo can indeed just heal and exit the poison from his body like Hakari did, shooting it out of his nose or something. Yeah, this is getting crazy. The final nerf we gave Gojo is being tired. Now, this can refer to a lot of things like regular fatigue or the aftermath of a long fight. I'll go for the latter just to make things more interesting because, like everything we talked about before, we've seen this in action. What makes this so ridiculous and stupid is the fact that, just like the blindfold thing, Gojo is the only person in the entire verse that is not as affected by a long fight as everyone else is. Yes, Gojo might lose some curse energy output, but he will never get anywhere close to running out of curse energy. So if Gojo were to fight 10 sukunas in a row and say he won all of those fights, he'd still be able to use 10,000 domain expansions in a row, heal 10,000 limbs in a row, use 10,000 hollow purples in a row, and nothing would happen because that's the superpower the 6 Eyes gives him. A domain expansion, which is always emphasized as the biggest curse energy eater, costs nothing to Gojo because of his ridiculous curse energy efficiency. It's just so stupid the bad Gojo has, but right now let's get into why this might actually be a nerf and also how Gojo fights with it. In his fight with Sukuna, Gojo's output lowers, and so his red did less damage to Mahoraga than an earlier red did to Sukuna, who used domain amplification to weaken it. It's also good to note that an earlier Gojo was about to one-shot Mahoraga with a red as well. When Gojo finally realizes this, he instantly goes against it and uses a prerequisite to boost the red, chanting incantations. This is how Gojo can go against his lower curse energy output, by using incantations, again just for his more advanced techniques. He can boost his infinity without it, but on top of that, Gojo has another way to help. So this is a really case specific thing, but if Gojo can land multiple black flashes, he'll automatically gain everything he's lost from his intense fight. The funny thing about this is that the intense fight he just went through, he would have definitely hit black flashes. In chapter 256, Gojo tells us the reason he cannot chain black flashes is because he cooks everyone he fights. But even then, he's hit more than 4 black flashes in total. If he's gone through an intense fight, he's hit a black flash, because once we saw him go through an intense fight in our faces, he literally hit 4. And so if we're being consistent given the nature of black flashes, Gojo will be way more able and ready to hit black flashes as opposed to if he were in a normal state. It's weird but not impossible because we already established that crippled Gojo is capable enough to zip through the battlefield however he wants to. Anyways, with all that said, despite all the nerfs we gave Gojo, he genuinely is still one of the strongest in the verse, given all the things he has at his disposal. So if he were to be dropped into a battlefield with literally everyone in the verse, would he win? Let's find out. This fight will take place, I don't even know, there's like hundreds of characters, it doesn't even matter. There is one rule and one rule only. Sukuna cannot enter the fight until everyone else dies, so we might not even get to see the guy. Anyways, the question is asked again, can crippled Gojo actually win against the entire verse? Gojo, in between everyone jumping at him, starts off by shooting the chlorine gas poison out of his nose, then flies up. Only a select few characters can actually chase him, like Mahito, Angel, Yuta, Uro, and anyone who could get high into the sky. Gojo is a master at damage control, and since everyone is his enemy, he can use literally everything in his arsenal. The real only problem is Angel, who can literally just turn off Gojo's curse technique, and if she's able to get this off, Gojo's crippled body would just fall on the floor and everyone would stop him out. Luckily, Gojo knows about this ability, so he's in the air for a reason. We saw Gojo expand his domain so large that it engulfs multiple buildings, and nothing is stopping dude from continuing the expansion of it. Of course, it will reduce the quality of the sure hit inside, but what the hell is a lowered version of your brain getting fried? Your brain getting fried -2? This thing is literally paralyzing everyone it hits, and if not, it paralyzes Hana, so Gojo takes advantage of this and summons a maximum output blue with one hand. Then he summons a red with the same hand, using chance not to skip anything, collides them together, and it explodes, deleting everyone in the domain. Cripple Gojo killed everyone in the verse, and now Sukuna arrives for the final battle. Oh, well, that's how it went. Well, anyways, Cripple Gojo beats the crap out of everyone who isn't named Sukuna, so I guess that's good enough. What did you guys think of this video? Depending on how it does, I might do a Sukuna one as well, but I'll see. Anyways, make sure to subscribe and comment your thoughts down below, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.